Welcome to this webinar on how the real-world OT cybersecurity environments can sometimes bring surprising discoveries and what are the lessons they have revealed. My name is Pekka. I come from SensorFu. I'll be emceeing today this webinar. We have an excellent keynote speaker today from Sweden, Mr. Robert Malmgren. Robert will be sharing his experience from the field, especially from the OT setting. Before Robert, we have our own Mikko Kenttälä, who will be discussing the new things that we're cooking up. A couple of practical things. Please keep your microphones on mute. If you have questions, there will be time reserved for questions after the presentations. We will be recording this webinar. The recording will be edited afterwards in a way that we show only the presenters and their presentations. Participants' names or faces are not visible. The participant questions will be also edited out. This webinar, as you might have noticed, is sponsored by SensorFu. We're the company that brings you Beacon, the automated security control assessment solution for proactive and automated 24/7 network isolation verification. But now, maybe it's time for us to begin. Our first presenter is the founder and CEO of SensorFu, Mikko Kenttälä. As you might know, Mikko has a long background in network security and security audits. Mikko will talk today about what we're cooking up in the SensorFu labs for the next releases of Beacon. So Mikko, let's hear your presentation.
Thank you, Pekka, and greetings for everyone. So happy to see you that there's so many of you over here. So like I was talking about before we started the actual event, that we don't have a full transparency that how many of you is actually joining because we didn't have a mandatory registration, and I'm so happy to see that there's so many of you over here. So let's start. So like Pekka said, I promised that I will talk about a bit about the things which are coming related to the Beacon. You most likely already know quite a lot about the Beacon, so I will just really quickly walk you through that how Beacon actually works and what we do, but immediately after that show something new, what is coming for the future. So since we started, our customers when we've been traveling all over the world telling the story related to the Beacon, the customers have really loved about the fact that the Beacon is quite simple and straightforward as an idea. And as you most likely may already know, the basic functionality looks something like this. So you deploy the beacons either as an application directly to the HMI, for example, or as a virtual machine or dedicated device to your most valuable isolated networks to continuously monitor that how well the network isolation is really working. And the fundamental idea is that the beacon, when you deploy the beacon, it tries to call home. It tries to call home with various different techniques, and if it's succeeding, you will get the notification that for some reason in this environment there was no network or no complete network isolation during that specific time period, and you get the details that what actually went wrong. Just to highlight that how things work, even with this simple approach or straightforward approach, you can cover really nasty configuration issues from your environment. So for example, you can of course find out the typical challenges related to the network isolation, but on top of that, like a firewall configuration, for example, but of course on top of that, like more complex situations like alternative routing points, some DNS misconfiguration or switch configuration errors and so on. And quite recently we had one case with our customer that all of a sudden beacons were deployed for a while already, and they started to get alerts. Or beacons were deployed and they started to immediately get alerts related to one thing, and that was broadcast DNS leak. The topology or the network for our customer looked roughly something similar what is over here. So this is not like the exact setup, but as an idea, they had a beacon running on their OT network. There was multiple layers which were basically doing the network isolation in multiple levels. They had multiple firewalls in place, quite strict configuration. There was no clear reason why they had this broadcast DNS leak. Typically, in our customer cases, if we see broadcast leak, it is something related to the alternative routing. So there has to be some other way out of that environment. So typically, since this was working fine, or should be working fine from the network isolation point, and then you get something which is related to the broadcast leak, and there's an alternative way out of the environment. We kind of validated that. We did the joint debugging with the customer, and we looked from this router firewall that we actually don't see the traffic which seems to leak out from that environment, from the firewall, which raised the awareness that there has to be some alternative route out. However, we were not able to find it together with our customer. So it was like a question mark for quite a long time. But after a while, they were doing some changes, and then all of a sudden they realized that, by the way, the network leak is not anymore happening. And they found out that the actual reason behind this was something like this. So indeed, there was an alternative routing point out of that environment, and it was via there was a cable connected to office side switch, which had a VLAN tagging on. So there was a switch configuration done in a way that they had a direct connection from the OT network to this specific office facing firewall. And that was the only connection was to this firewall. But since there was that connection, layer 2 connection, when Beacon sent a broadcast DNS packet, it was transferred all the way to the firewall over here. And since the firewall had the DNS resolver, that firewall did the DNS resolving, which led to the situation that they got immediate notification about the situation, what they had over there. And they were able to narrow it down that, okay, it was definitely this thing. So even though we have had a really straightforward solution where you deploy easily Beacon to your environment, it doesn't mean that the findings are always like something which is really straightforward, or this was definitely a good example that this was really hard to find out, because everything is otherwise working smoothly with the exception of the network isolation and so on. So everything was working smoothly, all the operations were running smoothly, no problems with that. But at the same time, there was a gap in the network isolation, and the Beacon was able to find that out. So that was one great example, and we got the really good feedback from the customers that they were really excited to actually find it out. And the background reason was that that configuration has been there like forever from their point of view, because it was something which was related to the a really early phase of testing when they were building originally the environment. So it was like a forgotten configuration over there. But even though customers have loved the fact that Beacon is simple and straightforward, we have got the one question quite often. And the question is, but can we do a testing from the OT to our office network, or horizontal testing or so on? And there's something new coming related to that. And that is receiver. So we are planning to release receiver in the near future as part of the product, but at the moment we are planning to release the first POC version during the fall. So what the receiver actually means. So instead of that picture what you saw previously, now with the receiver, it enables you to possibility to actually do testing also from the beacons to different segments and at the same time to the beacon home. So you can have a multiple place where the beacon tries to escape. You can so when you have a one beacon, it can have multiple addresses or receivers where it tries to contact, including receiver and the home. So with this enables you to do also much more complex setups also, which is the reason also why we want to do a POC with the first customers or first ones who are interested, because you can do actually quite complex setups, which may look like something like this. So you may have like multiple automation environments, and you may have a multiple receivers. So it gets really complicated, or not. Hopefully it will be easy to deploy still, but the actual what kind of connections are going on, there's much more options to actually test. So you could build something environment or sensor network which may look like something like this. One important thing to remember is that in this receiver's case, you need to have the management connection towards beacon home. So unlike in the beacon setup, you don't have to have any management connectivity anywhere. But in our case, with the receiver, you need to have the management connection. So the deployment with the receivers goes in a way that you go into the beacon home, you download the receiver from there, you put it into the place, and in that place, you need to have that specific connection towards the beacon home. And that way, we can transfer all the keys related to the encryption. We can deliver the upgrades for the receiver. We can provide you the central place to actually see if there's some leakages. So beacons, these receivers are always related to the beacon home, and they need to have the connection over there. So that is something which is a little bit different compared to the previous setup. So receiver in a nutshell. This enables the horizontal testing capability, so you can actually deploy beacon to multiple different network segments and have those tested at the same time. It has been possible already now in a way that you deploy multiple homes, but we believe that this will strongly make it more easy and feasible to actually do that kind of deployments from the management point of view, because you don't need to manage multiple homes. You just have the one home, which is kind of managing also the other receivers. And that way you can also have one beacon calling to the multiple different network segments. And this makes it kind of possible. So in first phase, this is how it's going to work. You download the receiver from the beacon home. It works similarly as it works with the beacons. Receiver will require the management connection. That's important to remember. But based on our early discussions with some of our key customers, they've been good with that it's good. They can deploy, for example, beacon receivers to the IDMC, and that would be something which is fine by their policies. And with this, you can test the multi-segment network isolation. So if you are interested, the POC will be available in next fall, so after the summer holidays. We're at the moment on internal testing phase. So if you are interested, if you're an existing customer or you are a partner, let us know. Then let's talk about what would be the good phase for you. We are planning to roll it in the certain phases, that there will be like a POC home, most likely in the first phase, where you can test and download it, and later on maybe we can provide it already to your existing beacon home. But we need to discuss together that what is the good timing for you and in which phase you want to jump in. So that's all from my side. Thanks, everyone. And I think there's a room for quick questions if someone have one.
All right. Thank you, Mikko. Now we have Robert, who's waiting in Italy. Although he's Swedish, he's now in the heat of Italy. And mind you, we have people all around the world joining in this webinar. And Robert is displaying wonderfully that. Robert is a founder and managing partner in 2 different companies. Many from the Nordic OTC might know his consultation company Romab, or maybe his cybersecurity product company Sysctl, and the Sysctl products, the USB laundry kiosk Impex, or the secure file transfer appliance Deadrop. Robert has, and I tried to kind of look into your history, you have over 347 years of experience in cybersecurity of industrial settings, especially in high security environments. And today, Robert will showcase some of the odd things he's encountered in the wild. So Robert, the stage is yours.
Thank you. I'll try to switch over, share my screen. Okay.
And confirm that.
Okay, perfect. So I'll quickly just say that, yeah, Pekka already introduced me. I'm trying to do some calculations since 1998 and failed miserably, but I thank you for the overestimation there. So I'm going to drop in directly to this presentation. But before we start, I'm going to skip a lot of the introduction, what is OT, what is ICS, etc. And also, I assume quite a lot of basic knowledge about IT security, like why is patching good or firmware upgrading, etc. when we're saying that these things are never upgraded and so on. I have asked some of our clients for some pictures to use here. I've also avoided in some other cases to actually pick some pictures because there would be too revealing. Then I have stock photos in those, but these I assure you there are real similar things behind that, and we will point out some of these interesting things. But the most interesting thing here is that some of the things, when you're taking them separately, they might feel, okay, that's a nuance, that's maybe not a big problem, but when you combine these things, then you realize, okay, it is bad that there is simple passwords and these things are reachable from other places over the network, etc., etc. So let's jump straight ahead into the famous, the password node. I was a bit surprised. I haven't seen a lot of these before, mostly because we have been done quite a lot of work for utility companies and like electrical utility companies, etc. And in their dispatch centers and in the control rooms and so on, people have a tendency to keeping a bit better level on things. But now lately we've been doing quite a lot of work for industrial companies, and you are walking around in these industrial facilities, and then you reach some type of control unit, some type of HMI, some type of PC that runs some part of our automation process, and then you suddenly see a lot of more yellow stickers again, and or even the labeling machine that putting a label on, or even written with a pencil on the actual screen, some username and some password. And as you can figure out, if something is used in this context, it's probably a rather simple password that is easy guessable anyway. And since it's in there on the sticker or on the label or even written with a permanent marker on the on the monitor, this has been there for years and it would never be changed, which is a problem in itself. And this is one thing if that is an application password that is only used within the application, but quite often this is an operating system login. So something that can be logged into this, even if it's a local account, it can be logged in over the network. But at many times we find that these are even AD accounts. So you have this ridiculously simple password that is easily guessable, that is actually reachable over the network, and it can even be used to log in at some other computer, some other place that is not on the OT side. Which sort of invalidates the quote I have in the beginning. It's not a problem because you need to be in the building to read that note. So this is a false dichotomy that many people actually have, that it's not a problem that you put up this sticker because you have to be in this industrial facility and read this note. So if it can be part of something that is like a password dump or whatever, if it can be actually used to log into the AD, it is a completely different issue that we are dealing with. But as I said, this is something that has been popping up quite a lot lately when we are more sort of looking more in the industrial facilities than at utility companies, which is a bit surprising to me. Then we have those interesting small devices. So you have a lot of things that is not the SCADA system, that is not the thing, the big thing that controls the physical process. You have like Ethernet to serial converter, copper to fiber converters, short hole modems, console extension boxes, intelligent power plugs, PNP couplers, etc., etc., etc. And these are things that often is somewhere networked. They not, if you have something that is modern nowadays, it is something with some simple Linux that is in the firmware, and it has hundreds or if not thousands of days of uptime. It is many times it is end of sale or end of life, and there's no good tooling for you as a customer of these to manage them. So how do you do a simple firmware update on all this stuff that are somewhere out in your network? You have to go there and attach directly or use some cumbersome tool to do it one by one. These are also not monitored, and there's no spare part many times. So these are the small things, the gravel in the shoe that aches. And over time, this can be used for like to hiding an attacker. You could launch attacks from them. You could even have attacks tools that runs on them. So these are things that people have a tendency to not want to change, not want to maintain. They are just there, they're just working until someone trips on a cable and you have to sort of plug it in again. They are the forgotten things. They are not sexy. They are not something that is taken care of. This has to be on the map as well, because these are the things that actually could hit you in the back. All those extra devices that sit in your network. And they are not part of the delivery from the big vendor or system integrator. It might be things that you have put there yourself, or some combination thereof. So who is actually responsible for this, and who is actually actively working and maintaining them? So this is something you have to have in the back of your mind and also work with. Another issue that is truth, everyone knows it, but nobody really talks about it, is that when one of the big vendors, any one of the big ones like Siemens, ABB, Hitachi, you name it, when they are actually finished with their products and they are rolling out, and you are doing your 2-year, 3-year project to implement them, you might have software components that, like an operating system or a database or a middleware or some other important part, that is actually end of life before you actually the project is finished and have delivered. So this is a problem in itself. You don't want to have end of life non-maintained components in this type of environment. So how do you put that into writing? How do you actually have that as contract clause that when we procure something, it should be at least be 3 years left or 5 years left on the lifetime of the major software components that gets delivered? Is that something that you could actually draft and get into your contract with your vendors? Also, the things when we see like this and we highlight that in an assessment report or something like that, we're already too late when we're pointing that out. If they should fix this, there should already be some refresh project that has been started before the initial project has been finished, because that will take some time to start up and working and doing things as well. So the whole OODA loop, the whole thing to actually work with this is long and slow and cumbersome, which is a problem in itself. So fixing things that gets found in an assessment or a security check takes a long time to actually get fixed in an OT environment. So another observation is not everything is bad all over the place. There are a lot of organizations that are working very actively with security, and a lot of them that has a good and mature security implemented. Like they have installed centralized logging and sending logs there. They have good network segmentation. They have network IDS and host IDS, and they are working well with handling accounts and passwords and multi-factor authentication, etc., etc. That are things that only covers the IT in OT. So you might have that for your application that runs on Windows or something like that, but you still have password logins to your OT parts, like EDs, RTUs, PLCs, those pesky Ethernet to serial converters that I talked about before. There is no centralized account management for those. They are still using HTTP for connection, not HTTPS. And so there's still a lot of work to be done on the OT side of things. So that is something that people should worry a bit more about and try to work harder to also lift and getting a better quality on the security there. Another thing, even in the most mature organization, you should really consider that your OT environment, your dispatch center and all the SCADA and all the central servers and so on, that you have tested and you know for sure how well this will work if you're going to run in island mode, if you're going to run disconnected from the rest of the enterprise. If there is like a big ransomware outbreak or something like that, you might want to disconnect your OT from the rest of the IT operations. That is not the time that you want to find out that you have this hard integration and things stops working because some file share on the IT side is not reachable, or that so you have some hard dependencies of DNS, or that you have some MQ or other integration software that will block things or break things. So please consider doing some hard planning for how to run things in island mode, and also do tests. People are always scared to do tests when we're talking about this type of things, but you should really consider doing testing. This is one of the things. This is like the last barrier, and it has to always work. And if you haven't tested it, it's bound to fail when you need it most. So please consider that you need to be able to run your OT environment isolated, and you should have tested. And if your bosses are afraid to do this type of test, they should really rethink things. Okay, Pekka was talking about interesting network things, so I just made this up in the background when he was talking. So one of the things that you often see is that in the actual SCADA environment, on the OT environment, it is more that you use legacy. You are using IPv4, so the applications and so on is not IPv6 aware. But the operating systems, if you run anything more modern than Windows XP or some really old Linux version, you will get IPv6 for free. It will be activated in the system if you are not actively disable it. And in many of these environments, it is on. And this can be used to reach between different network segments. It can be used to actually jump between different components. And even if you have blocked things on the IPv4 level and so on. So this is something that should not be forgotten. So this was just an extra slide made up in the background when I was listening to Mikko. Another thing is that often people has paid top dollar to have their Fortinet or Palo Alto come with extra licensing for OT protocol support. Many times we see that the actual firewall is located somewhere that doesn't see the OT protocols. So it will not run IEC 104, it will not run Modbus, it will not run ICCP or some other protocols through it. So then why actually spend this extra money and work to actually get this? So make sure that if you do things like this, have it installed where it actually make a difference. Have it also, if you have it installed, make sure that you know that it works properly. We have done some testings at some of the assessments where we actually try to trigger IDSs or NIDs when we're sending manipulated messages that are not following the protocol standard. And it still doesn't detect that and react on it. So this can be something that give you a false sense of security, that you think that we have this extra extensive security around our OT environment. But if you haven't really tested it, then you don't have it. So it's important that this has been tested as part of the rollout, that the configuration is correct. And when someone like us coming and doing an assessment, we will just give you a check that yes, it is like what you expected it to be. It's not that we should find out for the first time that for one or many years this has been installed and it has not been working properly. It will not detect, it will not give an event or alarm for anything like this. Another thing is that many organizations have zone models. They have some type of layering. They have putting their OT environment behind layers of firewalls, etc. And many times they think or expect that this is not internet reachable. And when I say internet reachable, it is in both ways. But not seldom you will have like Dell servers that will try to call home to the mothership because that is how the actual remote support works. Or you have some SAN disk box that needs to have it's sending the diagnostics information to NetApp or Hitachi or some other big vendor like that. So there is a leakage of information, but also that your assumption that this is completely disconnected from the internet might be wrong. Also, a standard type of thing is that people are good at inbound filtering but bad at outbound filtering. This is always important when we're speaking about this lower layer. Actually, it should be much more simpler for doing both inbound and outbound filtering from an OT environment than it is from a general enterprise environment. So please consider checking your firewalls and make sure that you're having a tight and restricted setup. So traffic leaving the OT environment also is strictly controlled. Another thing that I actually wrote this a bit challenging. We will not see PKIs in this environment for a long time, I think, but at least we will. If you buy a new SCADA system today, if you are in a project with some of the big vendors and they are delivering things, they will come to you and put things in a VMware environment with vCenter, with some SON and some backup and a lot of other tools. And those vendors, they are actually starting to use TLS more and more, but they generate self-signed certificates. So suddenly you go from an environment where you have plain text logins and old legacy protocols to something when you suddenly have more modern protocols and you have a lot of encryption everywhere, but there's no controlled or some systematic selection of the way that the keys are managed or the certificates are managed. So you might have 10 different certificates used for different parts of your environment, and some of them are short, maybe half a year, and some of them are like 20 years and so on. So you will have a lot of different not after timestamps, deadlines where things might expire. And if you are not aware of this, if you not know each and individual certificate exists and what it is used for and what will happen when it expires, you are bound to bump into disruptions. And in this scenario, I can say that we are not super gods ourselves. We managed to bump into a certificate that expired 10 years after it was created, and it was a hassle for us to actually to solve that problem. So it is something that will hit anyone. I mean, a small computer security company, that wasn't a big impact, but if you are a big energy company or oil company or some other utility or industry, an expired certificate might have a big real-world impact. So it could actually have an impact on the actual physical process. And so either you need to actually implement your own PKI and having control, and you are the one that actually is controlling all the certificate that exists in the environment, or at least you should have a list. So at the minimum, you should have a complete list with all the certificate and the expiration date and what they are used for and what the impact is for all the things that exist in your environment. So this is something that is in any modern SCADA or OT environment. So this is sort of a hidden problem today that will bite you in your nose while you're least expect it. This is one of those examples from the real world where we actually got the permission to use a picture from a site where we were doing this assessment. It was this big project going on, and they actually had a big vendor that was on site and doing some work. And they didn't ask the IT department or anything. They just needed to have access, and they needed to be mobile on site. So they installed their own Wi-Fi hotspot. And as you see, it was a very professional installation. And nobody could have a trip on this one or make some other problems with it as well. But from the more IT security or cybersecurity perspective, this also opened up the whole network. It also opened up, it becomes a backdoor into the OT network as well. So this is scary stuff, especially since nobody was aware of it until we, together with our client, was doing a site walk, and said, okay, interesting find. This is also a real world picture from another site, where the vendor has delivered a large system, and as part of their standard delivery, they said they installed this for remote support. So this is a small 4G, 5G router. It also has, which is not currently plugged in on this one, it has Wi-Fi antennas, but it also have Ethernet. So this allows someone coming over the mobile network and have direct access into the OT network. When we found this, there was an argumentation both in this case, but also in this case, about what is the access policy for this? Who has had the access to this? Do you have any logs? Can you prove that it is only you who has been remotely accessing this? Can someone else has actually been accessing this or that? And in both of these cases, they could not. They also had a very hard time to understand why we were so upset that someone could actually go over the mobile and then into some type of Siemens equipment. This is not the full RTU, but there were Siemens S7 PLCs in this rack as well. So going from the more IT security to the more maybe physical security, but also I cannot count how many times I have seen things hanging in cables in the racks. And normally it is one of these smaller devices that are not as important, maybe not even supplied by the big system vendor. But you have all these types of converters, or there was even a picture that I had, but I didn't get the permission to actually use it, where you actually have, a large PSU that should be DIN-mounted, but it was hanging in cables under this device that it actually powered. So these are the type of things that also is a big security problem in this type of environment. Comparing OT security and IT security and how things can look in professional data centers with some of these other industrial sites or utility sites where we are looking at things. This is something that is very easy to fix, the right length of cables, the right color of cables, not having things hanging in things, labeling things correctly and so on. So simple thing, not IT as in more cyber things, but not as sexy, but these are also super important to fix. Another thing that is worth mentioning is OT in the cloud. More and more things move out there. We have found in a couple of assessments where, for example, the actual backend system was in the cloud. It used to be on-prem, and then it moved out, and they had, for example, problems to having it complete work properly with the actual device in the field. And the reason for that was that it broke the actual protocol. It was too many hops, so the actual packet was thrown away. I think it was maximum 15 hops. So the way between the actual device and the backend should only be passed through like 15 forwarding devices. The hop count is increased for each step. So, and it was too far away, so it actually, it didn't work. So they did a workaround, put things in the tunnel, and then they made it work. But there's a lot of things that are sort of against the nature of how this is actually constructed from the beginning. So the reason why it's not allowed to be that far is that it can be, all this latency and all this transfer, all the time it takes to do this transfer. A third thing that is worth mentioning is that more and more of the equipment that we put into our OT networks, like industrial switches and so on, our vendors, it might be Westermo or Moxa or any of those big names, they put in features and functionality to remotely support them. So when you install one of these devices, it sort of registers with their portal that is in the cloud. And then if you need remote support, the vendor can just connect to this cloud portal, and then it gets direct access into the actual device. This is a good feature from a diagnostics and support perspective. It's not a good feature if you think that your internal network is completely internet disconnected. Another issue that is an oldie and goodie is the whole discussions about Active Directory. So it is well known, I would say, that you shouldn't have your OT stuff in this enterprise AD. You should probably have one or more OT ADs or ADs for different OT environments. But still, we see this happen today. It seems to be more relevant in some areas. For example, OT is a very broad definition on a broad technology area. But for some type of OT, like building automation, this seems, at least from our perspective so far, it seems to be more common in those scenarios that people put a lot of building automations like ventilation and alarms, building supervision type of thing. They put that in the ordinary AD instead of having that in a separate type of AD. This is something that one should really reconsider, because if the IT environments get in some way impacted, it might be that an administrator is doing some administrative changes, or it can be that there is an attack. The OT part will also be impacted, and to recover the IT part, you hopefully have good backups and you could or snapshots, and you could just roll back things. But many times your OT environment is much harder to recover. So that is the main driver for why you shouldn't have this in a shared infrastructure, where AD is one example, and a shared VMware environment is similar. So all the thing that is too integrated or too much sharing between these worlds, you should reconsider. So if we try to sum up things, some of the worst finds, some years back we found an IBM PS2 machine. Many of you were probably not even born when those were around, but at least were very young. And they were running OS2, and when OS2 was released back in the days, it didn't even have TCP/IP support. It came with later OS2 releases. And our client at that case said, "Oh, this is so important machine, so it's definitely out of scope of your actual test. You cannot touch it. If it breaks, we are in serious problem," which is a bit ironic in itself. Another example, which I call the worst admin fail, was a controller for a wireless sensor network, where if you actually port scan it and you found out that that port 10,000 something, you have a remote management interface, and you have full access to the device, and there was no way to disable this, which was a bit weird design, I think. The last one was a very special system that was used for, it was a security system to actually control a process. And everything was special. So a special ROM, the hardware, the software, and it's a special hardware. It was special connectors for the network, special protocols, and so on. But still, by spending some days with some laptops and writing some Perl code, we managed to actually, interact with this and manage to trigger that the things that this security system should detect. So we were able to actually generate false alarms and stop the process, which were not supposed to happen. So some takeaways from this presentation. So as you already know, but this is worth repeating, you need to have security requirements, and you have to have them in writing, and you have to have this sent to the vendor as part of the procurement or part of the project, and it needs to really get signed there as an appendix or part of the main contract, and you have to check that this is delivered upon. Many times vendors, they sign happily the contract and said this will of course be there, but if you start to really check, there's a lot of things that they have very over enthusiastically interpreted in their favor. So there's a lot of things missing or not working as you expect. So make sure you have it in writing, make sure it is in there in the beginning, so you can actually have a discussions on how to actually get it there if you find it's missing or not working as intended. Also, security assessment, different type of technical security assessments. Please do them as part of your early stage in the project. Not wait until it's deployed or been in use for many years. If it could be part of the vendor's FAT test, acceptance test at the factory, before they have shipped it to you, that is an excellent opportunity to actually try to start to look at things. And if you find something that is not in alignment with the requirement, if it's something that is broken or bad or missing, you should take them with that at this early stage, because then you have a good chance to have it fixed. If you don't, then it will be much harder to fix at a late stage. And also double check things later on, and then you could expand the scope, because what you see in the FAT is what the vendor's going to ship. It's not when it is actually in production environment where it is interconnected to the enterprise or to external organizations, etc. There are other types of issues that can be found at that time. Also, make sure that there are some basic security architecture in place. This is important both for the IT components and OT component. Also, be separated from enterprise IT. If you're not, then you will be a victim when they decided to say that they are a cloud-first company or they are an AI-first company or whatever. And maybe you are super happy to have things actually sent out from your environment and getting connected to the cloud or some LLMs that are run somewhere else, etc. Also, finally, we try to highlight this, especially since we're talking at this presentation with SensorFu. Everyone believes that there is an electronic parameter and that is fixed and that you are aware of it and you have control over it, but you might not. And some of the pictures that we show actually see people are installing things, even if it's against policy, even if it's against better knowledge. They might even say that it's their default delivery and so on. So make sure that things are under control when it comes to what is controlled coming in and coming out of the OT environment.
Thank you, Robert, for a really great presentation. There was already a question on the chat related that are you able to share your slides at the end of the event? Or the
yes, I am. It might be some alterations, but yes.
All right, great. So I think if you have any questions, I can quickly comment that especially there was many things where I can relate to, including the IPv6 that is really there, like, even though it's sometimes really hard to actually get it off. That is absolutely true. And we've seen also with the beacon that the firewall configuration, even if you have the firewall in place, you may be required that from the vendor. It doesn't mean that there's any rules inside of that firewall. So their firewall actually was over there, but wasn't blocking anything, and so on. And definitely with the routers, we've seen those in action also with our customers. And if you do Shodan searches, you can find out, for example, Teltonika routers, which may be something which is related to some whatever kind of automation environment. So it is really existing issue. Does anyone have any questions?
If you're interested in discussing more, please do so in any communication channel. As said, we'll be doing a recording of this webinar. If you have registered, we will be sending you an email later on after we've edited the webinar recording. If you haven't registered, we don't know where to send the link for you, so you won't get it. Quick message from the sponsor. As you may recall, SensorFu Beacon is the automated security control assessment solution to verify your network segmentation by continuous testing. We found out from our studies that over 80% of isolated critical networks leak in many ways, mostly unsuspected ways and surprising ways. The only way to make sure that your networks are and stay sealed is to do automated and continuous testing. But as for now, many thanks for Robert, many thanks for Mikko, many thanks for all of you participating to this webinar. Please enjoy the rest of your week and the upcoming weekend. So long.